Good morning, everyone, and happy Tuesday. My name is Nick Marro with Occupy Fantasy. You can find me on Twitter at Nick Marro DFS. As always, I'm here to help you break down tonight's MLB DFS main slates on both DraftKings and FanDuel. If you haven't already, please like the video. Also, subscribe to the channel. That helps us get more free content like this out to you on a regular basis. And if you're not a member of Occupy Fantasy, check the links in the description below. As a member, you get access to the model that I'll be using throughout the video. We also have a single lineup builder, multi lineup builder, and a private Discord server full of DFS pros to help you improve your game. We also have the MLB Daily Plug article, of which I'm a contributor, where we will feature our favorite arms, bats, and stacks for each main slate. We got a massive slate tonight, 14 gamer. Get your bets in now. Can I keep it under a half hour? Set that line at around plus 200, maybe plus 300. Going to be tough. It always is squeezing in so many games. But I do like to cover these slates game by game. I think it's important to really touch on everything at least quickly. Um, and yeah, 14 games. This is the biggest slate I think we've had. Usually there's a few earlier games. So if you are using the model, make sure you're selecting DK main or FanDuel main just to cut out that 1-6-40 game for Atlanta and Detroit. But otherwise, every single game is on the slate tonight. I have Sal Perez pulled up here. He's also the cover of the video. I just really like the matchup for the Royals. They're popping very well in the model against Brandon Williamson. Obviously, they get a lot of hitters that do well against left-handed pitching, but we'll get to them in a little bit. Let's get right into the game by game now. I have a notepad file up. I'm going to pull this over to my other screen. What I like to do is as I go through, if there is a stack or an arm I consider a priority, I will add them to that file. And then at the end of the video, I'll kind of give a high level overview of what I'm really honing in on and targeting. Enough pleasantries. Let's get into the slate. We got a massive one here. First game on the board, we got Chris Bassett in the Toronto Blue Jays taking on Dean Kramer and the Baltimore Orioles. Bassett, after a slow start to the season, he is rounding into form. The one issue with him is he does allow a lot of power to left-handed hitters. 289 ISO allowed to lefties this season, and the Orioles are expected to run out 4 or 5 lefties here, so that's going to keep him maybe out of my priority pool. I do think you can consider him here. He's ranking just in the bottom half of that top 10 in the model. Pretty solid K rate, affordable on both sites. Again, not something I'm prioritizing if the Orioles are going to roll out a bunch of lefties here, but I do think you can at least consider him if you're playing 150 lineups. But for me, really not a priority. But he is talented enough that I'm not rushing to Orioles bats either. If you were to play Orioles bats, like I said, you're going to want to hone in on those lefties. On the other side of things, we have Dean Kramer taking on the Blue Jays. Obviously, not a great matchup. They're doing okay as far as the model is concerned. They are outside that top 10, though, so it's tough for me to really call them a priority. Kramer, while he's not all that talented in terms of K upside, not really the arm you're ever looking to for DFS, just a 19% K rate this season. He does do a good job limiting damage, which is going to be the key here for him against a tough Blue Jays lineup. So I don't mind Blue Jays bats. I don't mind Orioles lefties, but it's tough for me to call either a priority, really. But I do respect those offenses enough to not really be on either pitcher. If I were on either pitcher, it would certainly be Bassett over Kramer, but no real priorities from this game. So we can move into the next one here. We got the Colorado Rockies taking on the Boston Red Sox. Chase Anderson on the mound for Colorado, taking on Cutter Crawford and Boston. So first things first, we'll get on to this Red Sox stack. Chase Anderson, just an 11% K rate this season, not missing any bats. Doing a good job limiting power. Very low ISO allowed to both righties and lefties. He has allowed more power to the right-handed side of things, and a lot of the Red Sox best hitters are actually lefties. So this isn't a terrible matchup for Anderson. Not one where you'd ever really consider playing him though, because he has little to no K upside. So no surprise that he's at the very bottom of the model here. I do not mind Boston here as a stack. Tough for me to call them a real top priority. But I mean, when you consider they have the top team total on the slate, they are certainly worth considering. So let's say we click over to the batters page here, see which Boston bats are popping. We're actually seeing the lefties, which is a little bit surprising to me. I guess if you pull Anderson's stats back to years prior, his splits kind of level out. So I don't know that these reverse splits of him allowing more power to righties is going to hold. But for now, I mean, we take a look here. We got Yoshida, Devers, Verdugo, Duran. All solid options. Casas, Turner, Hernandez, they're okay as well. Very popular stack here, Boston is. I will jot them down as a top stack. For me, I don't think I like them as much as the field does, though. They're going to be one of the highest owned with one of the highest applied team totals. But they're certainly worth considering against an arm in Chase Anderson who doesn't miss many bats. So just going to jot that down real quickly. Um, but yeah, on the other side of things, I mean, we have Cutter Crawford. I'm never really interested in Colorado, even when they're at cores, so I don't have too much interest here in them on the road. The thing is, Crawford does a good job striking out lefties, but he also allows a ton of power to lefties. So it's kind of a strange matchup in that regard. If I were to use Rockies bats, it would be guys like Ryan McMahon, Nolan Jones, who seems to be on fire right now, but I really can't consider Colorado a major priority as far as stacks are concerned. They are cheap though, so I mean, if you want to get to Rockies, I would favor the lefties. I will actually jot them down just because it seems they're not trying really any over ownership at all. But favor the left-handed hitters if that's where you decide to go. But for me right now, I really have no interest in either of the pitchers from this game. Not crazy about either stack, but I do think they're at least worth mentioning. Both kind of floating in that top 10 in the model, so they are certainly worth considering on paper. Moving into the next game on the board, we have Luis Severino and the New York Yankees taking on Max Scherzer in the Mets in a Subway Series contest here. So Severino, he's been pretty inconsistent. Taking a look over at the model, we see Scherzer towards the top. Looking for Severino, and yeah, he's kind of towards the middle half. Um, Middle half. He towards the bottom half of the middle there. But yeah, I don't know that I want to get to much Luis Severino. Obviously, Pete Alonso's still out for the Mets, boosts him. But over Severino's last two starts, he's allowed 11 earned runs. So the Mets not popping towards the top. They're kind of banged up right now. But I would rather play Mets bats than Luis Severino here. But I really don't have much interest in either side. On the other side of things, though, we have Max Scherzer. Obviously, when he's at his best, he's one of the best pitchers in baseball. Really haven't seen that out of him this season. Doing a good job limiting damage. The K rate's down a little bit. Still getting a lot of strikeouts against righties, but they're way down against lefties. Historically, Scherzer not as good against left-handed hitting, so it's not the most surprising thing here. But what you got to keep in mind is this is kind of a piecemeal Yankees lineup. I mean, they've been resting guys more often than they should necessarily. Aaron Judge is going to be out here. Anthony Volpe has been a major disappointment. So when you look at this lineup, you're going to see guys like Willie Calhoun, Jake Bowers, Billy McKinney, just really nothing that you need to be terribly afraid of. So I do like Scherzer here. I'm going to take a quick look at his recent results. The model has him popping as the third best pitcher on the board. And yeah, I mean, he allowed 5 earned runs last time out against Atlanta. Obviously, that's a tough matchup, though. He did strike out 10 in that spot, so he's K'd A plus in 3 straight starts. So I'm going to go ahead and write down Max Scherzer as one of the top SP options on the board. Again, this is not the Yankees lineup that they had planned to run out for much of this season. Certainly banged up right now, and a lot of guys underperforming. So Max Scherzer, one of the better arms on the board. But we're seeing that reflected in ownership, very popular on both sites. But he's sub 10K, so you could have fit some expensive bats with him and feel pretty good about it. Really, again, just to reiterate, no real interest in Luis Severino here. Don't hate the Mets bats, but I don't like them enough to call them a priority. The one piece from this game we really like is going to be Max Scherzer. Moving into the next game on the board now, we have Corbin Burns and the Milwaukee Brewers taking on Pablo Lopez in the Minnesota Twins. I'm just pulling up some statistics here. First, checking out the model, and what do you know? The two top arms on the entire slate are coming from this game. So we have Corbin Burns, taking a look at some statistics here, just 24% K rate on the season, but doing an excellent job holding both righties and lefties to a combined 120 ISO, sub 270 WOBA, just an excellent job limiting damage. And similarly to the Yankees, this Twins lineup is a little bit banged up. No Byron Buxton at the top of the order certainly hurts their upside. They are getting Joey Gallo back tonight, who obviously presents some home run risk, but also he strikes out a ton. So the upside is going to be solid here for Burns, who has struck out 7 in it looks like 5 of his last 6 outings, coming off 3 straight quality starts. So no surprise at all to me that we're seeing Corbin Burns pop as one of the best arms on the slate. I love him here. Really going to be tough to get away from him. If you are playing him on DK, he's very popular. Only 10% over on FanDuel, though. I actually really like him as a tournament play over there. But Burns, one of the better pitchers on the entire slate. I like him a lot on both sites. His counterpart here, Pablo Lopez, coming off a nice outing, quality start where he struck out 6 Rays. Obviously, a very tough matchup for him there. And he looked great. So Lopez, pretty inconsistent to start the season, doing a decent job limiting power, holding opposing hitters to a sub 170 ISO, right around a 300 WOBA. K percentage is up around 29% though, which you obviously love to see. Brewers lineup hasn't been terrible. But at the same time, he's just a little bit too cheap over on DK at 8,800, 9,800 over on FanDuel. Not really shocked at all by the upside we're seeing here. And yeah, this Brewers projected lineup has around a 25% K rate against right-handed pitching right now. So Pablo Lopez, another arm. Tough to trust him as much as Burns or Scherzer, but I do think he's in that top tier as an arm we're going to want to consider, and the model totally agrees with that. Um, but yeah, keep an eye on that ownership. He's very popular on both sites right now. I think the most popular arm on FanDuel. Yeah. So if he's the most popular arm on FanDuel, I'm comfortable going elsewhere over there. But on paper, he is certainly one of the best arms on the board, and I really have no interest in stacks or bats from this game on either side. Moving into the next game on the slate now, we have Alex Cobb and the San Francisco Giants taking on Jack Flaherty and the St. Louis Cardinals. Taking a look here quickly. Well, we're on the pitcher page of the model already. Where are they? So Cobb's kind of towards the middle, Flaherty just at the bottom half of that top 10. I mean, we've seen some huge games out of Flaherty this season. He looked good last time out, 8 Ks in a quality start. No earned runs against Texas, who has been one of the hotter offenses in baseball. But we've also seen him implode at times. So I do like Jack Flaherty here. Really like the 8K price tag, 8,300 over on FanDuel. By no means a great matchup against San Francisco, but it's tough to call San Francisco like a super dangerous offense. I mean, they're pretty inconsistent. They have a lot of good hitters. They do show a high 170 ISO against righties, but they've been better at home, and this is a tricky spot on the road here. So I'm not crazy about Giants bats. I don't imagine they're going to pop too highly in the model either, which is going to kind of confirm that suspicion for me. I mean, they are just outside that top 10, and like I said, Flaherty has been known to implode on occasion, but for me personally, in this specific matchup, I'd rather play Flaherty than these Giants bats. Some risk on Jack Flaherty here, but I do consider him one of the better quote unquote value options. He's kind of mid range value, some risk, but I do like him here against the Giants. And yeah, another reason for this, um, this Giants offense has a 26% K rate against righties this season. So while they do have power in this matchup, they are going to pose a threat. They also present a lot of upside, and you're going to need upside on a 14 game slate like this one. So get to some Flaherty. Giants bats look okay in the model, but again, I'd rather get to the pitcher there. On the other side of things, we have Alex Cobb taking on the St. Louis Cardinals. Cardinals offense has been super inconsistent, especially against right-handed pitching this season. And Alex Cobb, I mean, clicking over to the pitcher model, just seeing if he's showing up at all. Um, yeah, kind of towards the middle. Not really something we'd want to prioritize. He's done a great job limiting damage, which is why I'm not going to be on Cardinals bats here. But at the same time, just a 21% K rate this season, so not a ton of strikeout upside for Cobb here. And yeah, he's priced. He's more expensive than Flaherty, so I'd rather get to Flaherty. There's a few other pitchers in that mid range we like. But for me personally, they kind of wash each other out. Not all that interested in Cardinals bats, not all that interested in Cobb. If there's anything from that game I like, it is Jack Flaherty. Moving into the next game on the slate, and we may lose this one. We have Luis Ortiz and the Pittsburgh Pirates taking on Jamison Taillon and the Chicago Cubs. Few of the industry weathermen say this game is likely going to be a wash, so I don't know that we need to dig too deeply into this one. I'm just taking a quick look. I mean, Tyon just outside the top 10 there. He's been very inconsistent. I don't have much interest in him. And then Ortiz kind of mid range as well. Just going to make sure that we're not seeing Pitt or Chicago towards the top of the stack list. Nope, they're towards the middle slash bottom. So this game's total wash for me. I don't want to waste time on it. I think there's a good chance it's postponed. And even if it goes, I respect the arms enough not to rush to the stacks. I respect the stacks enough not to rush to the arms. So we could just kind of cancel out that Pittsburgh versus Chicago game for now. Moving into the next game on the board, we have Jaime Barria taking on Cody Bradford. That's the Angels at the Rangers. So Bradford um, got some hype coming up as a prospect. Hasn't looked great necessarily. Um, and yeah, I don't know that I want to get to him at all here. Taking a quick look at the model. Where is Texas? Is he just not showing up at all? Yeah, I'm not seeing Bradford there right now, but at the same time, I don't know that we need to. I don't think he's in the player pool, but at the same time, he's not really an arm I'd be rushing to get to. I think he's a pretty highly regarded prospect. I don't want to spend too much time digging into prospects. That's half the reason these videos have been going so long. But I will pull up his minor league stats while this loads. Just checking to make sure audio is still working. But yeah, we're good to go. So getting hung up on this rookie as we often do. Not a lot of data, so it's tough for me to really speak too deeply on him. I have heard the name, I have heard some hype on this kid, but at the same time, I don't think I want to play him on this slate if he is added to the player pool in a tough matchup against these Angels. So again, I don't know why the Angels aren't in the model yet. Oh, no, there they are. So yeah, I'm gonna pull up Bradford, but while I wait for that to load, let's click back over here. We were making great speed, and now we've kind of come to a screeching halt. But yeah, Jaime Barria has been surprisingly effective this season, limiting opposing hitters to a sub 100 ISO, a sub 230 WOBA. So he's been really solid, around a 25% K rate. So brutal matchup for Barria here, but it wouldn't be insane to play him, I think, against Texas. The issue is obviously the matchup. It's very risky. I think you're better off getting to Texas bats. We see them just outside the top 10 here. But at the same time, I mean, Baria's done such a good job limiting damage that I don't really want to call the Rangers a priority stack, even though they've been pretty much excellent. Excuse me. So I got Bradford pulling him up on my other screen here. So he was doing great in the minors. He got the call up, has not been so effective at the major league level. Last time out, 5 innings, 2 earned runs, 5 Ks against Baltimore. Then he pitched against Atlanta, where he allowed 6 earned runs in his debut. But I mean, you look at the minor league numbers on the season: 1.8 ERA, around a K per inning pitch. So not a bad arm when he got the call up on paper, but it looks like he maybe got rushed up. So I am not surprised at all to see that we like the Angel bats here. I'm going to go ahead and click over to the Angels. Otani, I think, hit 2 home runs last night, maybe three. I don't know. Guy's an absolute savage. Um, but let's bring up the bats here, and hopefully we can rebuild that momentum that we had. Because not having data for Bradford certainly slowed things down. But pulling up the Angels here, Trout, Otani at the top, no surprise there. Zach Neto, who's been excellent, dirt cheap on both sides, 2,800 on DK is fairly egregious. Even as a 9 hole hitter, I like him as a low owned option to kind of use in a wraparound stack. Drury, Renfro, never crazy about Anthony Rendon, but he is very cheap on DK now. So the Angels, I'm going to write them down as a stack we can consider against Bradford here. And let's see. Bradford is a lefty, so we're going to be favoring the right-handed bats. Very small sample, but 379 ISO allowed to right-handed hitters. Just keep in mind, Otani does hit from the left side, but he's essentially matchup proof. So I'm going to write down favor right-handed hitters plus Otani. But really do like the Angels here. Don't like the Rangers bats as much as the model does because I do respect Barria. I don't necessarily trust Berea. If you're desperate for a value arm, I guess you could go there. But for me personally, the one thing I like from this game are those Angels bats. So enough time on that one. Let's get into the next game now. We have the Washington Nationals with Patrick Corbin on the mound, taking on Hunter Brown and the Houston Astros. So clicking over to the model here. A little bit surprised we're not seeing Brown a little bit higher ranked. It is a favorable matchup against the Nationals. I think the main reason for that is the price. He's just overpriced, north of 10K. We've already discussed a few arms we really like that are a lot cheaper. But pulling things up here, going to talk about Brown first. 28% K rate, just a 120 ISO allowed, 300 WOBA to both righties and lefties, and he's taking on a Nationals team that doesn't really hit the ball all that well. The issue in running pitchers out against the Nationals, especially right-handed pitchers, though, they only strike out around 18% of the time. So Hunter Brown's okay here at very low ownership, but he's kind of overpriced, but that's the reason you're going to get him low owned. So I don't hate him as an option, but really tough for me to call him a priority. But he's certainly talented enough for me not to want to get to any of these national bats. On the other side of things, I imagine we see Houston towards the top of the model today. Yep, no surprise there at all. Patrick Corbin still in the league, still pitching better than I think anyone expects him to, but at the same time, never an arm we have to fear. The Astros projected starting lineup around a 160 ISO against lefties this season. Still no Jordan Alvarez, which is hurting their upside, but at the same time, I do respect them as a stack here. I think they're one of the teams we're going to want to get to. Corbin, just a 14% K rate, barely missing bats at all, allowing a 186 ISO to righties. So definitely favor the right-handed hitters here, even more so than usual because Jordan's out of the lineup. So we like the Astros, favor those right-handed hitters. If you want to use Kyle Tucker, he's fine, but guys like Altuve, Bregman, all very appealing. Jose Abreu suddenly hitting the ball again, 2 home runs I think over the course of the last week. So really do like the Astros bats here. But Corbin, he's been kind of tilting the stack against, I will say. Um, Usually pitches better than we expect him to, but at the same time, I would much rather get to Astros bats than anything else from that game. So definitely get to some Astros tonight. Moving into another game where we like the bats a lot, we have Brandon Williamson and the Cincinnati Reds taking on Jordan Lyles and the Kansas City Royals. No surprise at all. We are seeing Williamson at the bottom of the stack matrix or the pitcher matrix here. Lyles not too far behind. Um, One of the better spots to go for bats. If you're looking to bet an over tonight, if you can get this game at 9.5, which is where I'm seeing it listed, I like the over here. Brandon Williamson, we'll start with him. Pulling up the stacks page, we see Casey ranked as the second stack on the board. Williamson allowing a near 300 ISO to right-handed hitters, 371 WOBA to righties across 100 plate appearances, only a 17% K rate, so not missing many bats. And then we have a solid Royals offense here. I'll go ahead and hop over to the batters page and pull them up. Sal Perez, our cover boy on this video, had him pulled up to start as well. The highest OF index play on the slate, I believe. If not, he's one of them. But Perez, Witt, um, don't mind Prado, Olivares, Melendez as well. Really, this entire lineup looks good. And yeah, if we go over, check out the ISOs for these guys. Um, Not a ton at the top end. Usually you like to see more guys over 200, but ridiculous. We got Witt at 350, Perez at 360. Two of the best hitters on the slate in Perez and Witt. And other than those two, this is a very, very cheap stack. So I love the Royals here. Kansas City, one of my favorite stacks on the board. They are drawing ownership, but they're reasonably owned in my opinion. Definitely favor the right-handed hitters here, obviously, against an Armin Williamson who's been struggling to get righties out, allowing a ton of power to right-handed hitters as well. On the other side of things, we have the Cincinnati Reds, and what do you know? They're the top stack on the board. So, like I said, if you can bet that over at 9.5, maybe even get some alternate lines in there, you can get good plus money on 10.5 and 11.5, depending on the books, depending on what state you're in, if they allow you to kind of bet on all lines. But excuse me, Jordan Lyles, need to take a sip to talk through him here. 269 ISO allowed combined to righties and lefties. He's been terrible to both sides of the plate. 17% K rate, around a 350 ISO allowed. He looked good last time out. But he's just a terrible pitcher by major league standards, having a terrible, terrible season. So I'm not surprised at all to see the Reds popping towards the top here. And the thing about the Reds, it's taking models a little bit of time to adjust. They've had so many call ups. Matt McLean, excellent. And then Ellie De La Cruz taking the league by storm. One of the best young prospects in all of baseball, if not the best young prospect in baseball. Love the two of them here. They're both a little bit underpriced. You got Friedel, Benson, Jonathan India, always a staple of Red Stacks, kind of the vet presence in that lineup now, which is kind of crazy to see because he was a prospect just a couple years ago. Spencer Steer, if he's in there. I always like playing Stevenson at a thin catcher position, especially on DK. Love, love, love the Reds here. They look absolutely outstanding. Definitely prioritize Cruz and McLean. It's nice to see that they gave Ellie third base shortstop eligibility, so you can now play him with Matt McLean. I think there were a couple slates where they were both just shortstop only, but we love the Reds here, and you can get to both right-handed hitters and left-handed hitters. Zero interest in arms from this game. Again, the two top stacks on the slate are in the same game according to the model. That's the Reds and the Royals. Love, love, love them here. Kind of the opposite in this next game. We have Edward Cabrera and the Miami Marlins taking on George Kirby and the Seattle Mariners. Cabrera just outside that top 10. And where's Kirby? I thought Kirby would be higher in the model. Oh, I'm not sorting by OF index. That would explain it. So Cabrera right outside the top 10. George Kirby. Boom. I had my cursor on him. Number five right there. Both look excellent in his arms here. I'm not going to say Cabrera is excellent. Obviously, Seattle's a dangerous lineup. But George Kirby's been one of the better young arms in baseball. Going to go ahead and click over to them here. So yeah, we'll start on the George Kirby side of things, and like I said, I don't imagine we'll see either of these stacks anywhere close to the top. Yeah, Seattle, Miami, nowhere to be seen, and they shouldn't be. So George Kirby here, just a 20% K rate on the season, which obviously isn't ideal. But he's facing a Marlins lineup with around a 23% K rate against right-handed pitching. He's done an outstanding job limiting damage and even limiting contact. Just a 298 WOBA allowed to opposing hitters this season, 138 ISO. Consistently a really solid play. 9,300 on DK, a lot more appealing than that 10.8 price over on FanDuel. Just going to take a quick look at his game logs. I'm a little bit shocked to see how low his ownership is. He got rocked last time out in San Diego against the Padres. He's been inconsistent, but like I said, no ownership on an arm that does have solid upside. So I would get to some George Kirby here. I wouldn't put him in the same category as, say, Burns, Scherzer, or Lopez, but he's in a tier below. He has enough upside to consider. Then on the other side of things, we have Edward Cabrera. So Seattle, obviously a dangerous offense, but they came more than 26% of the time against right-handed pitching. Projected starting lineup just under 26% of the time. But yeah, near 30% K rate for Cabrera. So you get a pitcher with a very high K rate against an offense that strikes out a ton against righties. That leaves you with a lot of upside here for Edward Cabrera. Certainly some risk, but he's been solid. For 5+ Ks in five of his last six outings. Didn't look great last time out against the Royals, but otherwise he's been really solid all month. Don't mind the price on him either, especially on FanDuel at 8,800. That feels a little bit too cheap, relatively speaking. 9,600 on DK feels a bit expensive, but like I said, massive K upside for Edward Cabrera here. So I do like him a lot against the Seattle offense. I will say you can maybe consider Seattle bats, but we tend to prefer them in contrarian spots against lefties. So I don't know that we have to rush to them here, but I do like both pitchers. I actually think Cabrera has the higher ceiling of the two, but Kirby probably the higher floor, but certainly two arms you can consider. Moving into the next game on the slate now, we got the Battle of Zacks. We got Zach Wheeler and the Phillies taking on Zach Davies in the Arizona Diamondbacks. Taking a quick look over at some numbers here. Wheeler, where is Zach Wheeler? Am I crazy? Is he not in the model? Let me quickly refresh this. I think we're going to see Zach Wheeler pop towards the top of the model. I'm a little bit shocked he's not in there right now. Wheeler with a 27% K rate on the season, holding opposing batters to a solid, there he is, to a solid 127 ISO. But yeah, a little bit lower in the model than I expected. Not drawing a ton of ownership. I do like him as a contrarian option. I mean, the reason, obviously, that he's not so high, and I should have probably caught on this sooner, he's taking on a very dangerous Arizona offense. They've been one of the best offenses in baseball. I respect Wheeler enough not to want to get to them tonight. But yeah, I think they're talented enough to maybe not consider Wheeler a top priority. But I do like him in tournaments as a low-owned pitcher. Obviously, he's talented enough to put up a big score, so I would consider Zach Wheeler here, even though I wouldn't really call him a safe option or a top priority. On the other side of things, we have Zach Davies. No surprise, Phillies just around the top 10 as far as stacks are concerned. Davies comes into this one allowing not much power to either side, which is why I think the Phillies aren't popping as highly as I might expect. The thing about Davies, you never really need to play him though. Sub 20% K rate, just not a ton of upside there. This is one of those matchups where I respect the pitcher enough to not want to play the stacks, mostly just respect that he's limiting power. And I respect the stack enough to really not want to play the pitcher. And I really never have interest in Davies. He just doesn't have much of a K upside. Moving into the next game on the board now, we have Tanner Bibby and the Cleveland Guardians taking on Joe Musgrove and the San Diego Padres. Bibby, one of the better young arms in baseball. Obviously, a brutal spot here against one of the better offenses in baseball in the Padres. Padres have been underperforming, but on paper, they are still extremely dangerous. Bibby does a good job. Generating strikeouts, but the K rate's lower than expected. So what that tells me is he's been pretty inconsistent. This Padres offense has a 160 ISO against right-handed pitching. That's their projected starting lineup. So if we go over to the stacks page, they're outside of the top 10. I respect Bibby enough not to want to get to the Padres, but I respect the Padres enough to not want to get the Bibby. So no real interest on that side of things. Then we have Joe Musgrove on the other side for San Diego taking on a Guardians lineup that only Ks around 19% of the time against right-handed pitching. So, well, I do like Musgrove here, especially at the 7,800 price tag over on DK, 85 over on FanDuel. Really like the price. There's not a lot of good value on the slate. Um, you just need to know going in that he has limited K upside. Um, just because these Guardians are very patient, not always putting the bat on the ball, not always scoring a bunch of runs, but they also don't strike out enough to really want to consider them the offense that we want to target with opposing pitchers. But like I said, Musgrove feels too cheap here. Off that alone, I think you can get to some shares. Moving into the next game here, we have Jalen Beeks taking on Hogan Harris, a couple of lefties. Um, and yeah, this is a pretty interesting one in my opinion. Gonna check the stacks page to see if either are popping. Oakland obviously never really popping towards the top of the model, just not a ton of power in that offense. The Rays, though, we do tend to see them pop in matchups like this one, but we just don't have much data on Harris yet. Um, 14% K rate. He's done a good job limiting power, but I don't know. Can we count on that moving forward? Maybe, maybe not. Not seeing a team total out for the Rays as things stand. So yeah, it's interesting. Vegas doesn't have lines out for this one yet. Two very young arms. I think Beeks is just getting the call up again after being down in the minors or being injured for a little while. We see him coming after an opener on occasion. Maybe that's why they're holding off, because that line could get wiped from the board if they do go with an opener. But personally, I think we could get to some Rays bats here. Not going to pop into the model yet, but they do have a 211 ISO against lefties this season. Um, so yeah, maybe get to some Rays, even if the model doesn't like them quite yet. Just keep an eye on that throughout the day. Um, I'm just going to make a note here. Keep an eye on the model versus Harris. But as things stand, no lines in Vegas, so they're not really going to pop in here. On the other side of things, we have Jalen Beeks. I'm not all that impressed with Beeks, but he does have a very short leash. So if he's struggling, Kevin Cash is going to go to the bullpen. Rays do have a good bullpen, good enough for me not to want to get to Oakland bats. So I'm not going to spend much time on that side of things. But do keep an eye on this one, at least on the Rays bats. Harris hasn't been bad, but he's really not an arm we have to fear necessarily. Allowed 3 earned runs last time out and a home run, 2 earned runs to start before that. In softer matchups against Pittsburgh and Miami than he's going to be seeing here. So the Rays not popping in the model. They have no team total in the model yet, but that's because Vegas hasn't released one either. Definitely keep an eye on that. We could get the Rays a lot lower owned than they should be, maybe. So keep an eye on things there. Not to get too redundant, but I do think that's a spot worth considering. All right, we got one more game on the board now. Thanks again, everyone, for tuning in. Um, we have Lance Lynn and the Chicago White Sox taking on Tony Gonsolin and the Los Angeles Dodgers. So Lynn, wildly inconsistent, allowed a combined 13 earned runs over his last 2 starts. I'm a bit shocked to see the Dodgers not even higher in the model here. Obviously, one of the best offenses in baseball. You got guys like Betts, Freeman, Muncy, Martinez, all having outstanding seasons. And Lynn, I mean, 217 ISO allowed to opposing hitters. That's not very good. Much worse to lefties though. So if you do want to go to Dodgers bats here, favor the lefties. Guys like Freeman, Muncy, obviously, Hayward and Peralta are very cheap. But guys like Mookie Betts and JD Martinez are essentially matchup proof. So I like the Dodgers here more than the model suggests. Maybe keep an eye on this one as well. We do see that high team total. They are ranking top 5 in that category. But yeah, Lance Lynn has not been any good. He's struggling. I could see maybe him hitting the IL after the start if he struggles. I don't think they'd send him down, but this is the situation where it's like maybe we fake the injury and hope he can get things right. But on the other side of things, we have Tony Gonsolin, pretty talented arm, hasn't been great this season, always on a short leash with Dave Roberts. I don't think he's gone over 5 innings yet in his start this season. K rate not really where we want it to be. 18% K rate on the season, so not a ton of upside here. But the White Sox offense has been mostly terrible. I would rather get to White Sox bats than I would Tony Gonsolin, but I really don't have any interest in White Sox bats either. So that side's kind of a wash. If there's anything from this game I like, it is those Dodgers bats, excuse me, against a struggling Lance Lynn. So we made it through the team by team. Let me pull up my notes here and just quickly talk through what I'll be honing in on tonight. So as far as top stacks go, no surprises. We got the Royals and Reds at the top from that same game. Lyles and Williamson, two of the worst arms on the board. Plenty of upside. Boston Red Sox look good here against Chase Anderson. He's done a good job limiting power, but at the same time, I mean, the Red Sox, they're kind of an outlier. I think they could put up big numbers in this spot. The Rockies against Cutter Crawford, not necessarily my favorite spot. But they're going to be low owned. You could favor the left-handed hitters there. The Angels look good here. It is certainly a matchup where we're favoring righties against Cody Bradford, but Otani's matchup proof. Don't be afraid to play him. Astros, they do not have Jordan. Definitely favor lefties, or I mean, excuse me, righties against Patrick Corbin there. Rays, keep an eye on the model. There is no total yet for them. I do expect them to climb towards the top once that comes out. We're going to want to favor the right-handed hitters here against Harris, but definitely one of the better offenses in baseball. Maybe we get them low owned because model for the background here. We can talk through the arms now. Burns, Scherzer, probably the two best arms on the slate. Pablo Lopez, I would separate that as kind of your first tier. Edward Cabrera, I like here for his K upside against Seattle. Certainly comes in with some risk. Kirby, high floor, not as much K upside against Miami as you might expect, but he's a solid option. And then we got Joe Musgrove. Wish Cleveland offered more K upside, but he's too cheap. One arm I'm probably going to take some risks on tonight is Jack Flaherty against the Giants. He seems to be in quality form. His numbers are still skewed towards a terrible start to his season. So I think it's taking models and ownership a little bit of time to adjust to him. But he has upside, obviously some risk in that matchup though. Hunter Brown's overpriced, but we're getting him low owned. Similar story with Zach Wheeler here. Very tough matchup against the Diamondbacks, but he's an arm I consider. So this is where I'm at. 14 game slate. I do think we probably lose that Pittsburgh at Chicago game, making it a 13 gamer. A lot of spots to like. Definitely keep an eye on the model throughout the day. If you are a subscriber, things are very much likely to change. Feel free to add me a Discord if you're a subscriber. I know a few of you have big tickets for tonight. Use those satellite strategy to get yourself in some massive, massive contests. This is a big slate, which means ownership should be relatively flat. If you're playing chalky pitchers, maybe don't go too chalky with your stacks, but we have quality options on both sides of things, so I don't know that we need to. Once again, my name is Nick Marro with Occupy Fantasy. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, follow me on Twitter at Nick Marro DFS, and if you're not a member of Occupy Fantasy, check the links in the description below. As always, let's have some fun tonight, everyone. Good luck. Let's make some money. Take care.